Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of Yumi Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is day 1 million of the coronavirus pandemic. I am recording this intro in a very small room with 2 dogs and my partner in life, Jessica. It's very cramped. I think someone is farting. It's possibly me. And it's great, and I love it, and I couldn't be happier because this is episode 139 with my guest, author, and mental health advocate, Kitt O'Malley. Kitt and I, on this episode, talk about how we're coping during the coronavirus. We actually recorded this back in April, which seemed like a lifetime ago. We talk about getting hyper-focused in times of crisis, growing up in chaotic households, feeling of belonging, and giving ourselves the grace of imperfection. Kitt is a wonderful Feely human, a great advocate for mental health, and a tremendous author and writer as well. Before we get to the episode, though, I wanted to remind you that you can call into the show. You can share your voice. You can ask me questions. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Just leave me a voicemail, and I will talk about it here on the intro. The number is 949-346-4563. Again, 949-346-4563. Hope to hear from you, and don't be shy. It's all right. This is a safe space. You can ask whatever you want to ask, and I'd love to hear from you. Again, 949-346-4563. The other thing is, please leave a rating and review for Yumi Empathy in Apple Podcasts. It does help out the show. It's a free way to support the show. I recently also created a page to help you out. It's called 10 Ways to Support Feely Human. If you go to feelyhuman.co/support, there are financial ways. There are many non-financial ways to be a part of the community and to support me and this podcast and the Feely Human Collective. Again, that's feelyhuman.co/support, and make sure to leave a rating and review for Yumi Empathy in Apple Podcasts. And I guess I will just say, also, this week, in just a few days, I am releasing, that seems weird. I am sending is the right word. This is the right verb. I'm sending out the new newsletter, the latest dispatch of the Feely Human Collective newsletter. So if you want to be a part of that, and I hope you do, be a part of that email list. It's great. Join the newsletter at feelyhuman.co. If you go to the homepage, feelyhuman.co, scroll down to the bottom and fill out that form at the bottom, you'll be part of the newsletter. So go do that. It's fun. Also, I might be recording a second intro today because this week I'm going backpacking in the woods with my dear friend David. Very excited. And excited to talk about that experience when I get back. But until then, I hope you enjoy this episode. Episode 139 on belonging, imperfection, and chaotic households with my guest, Kitt O'Malley.
Me, empathy.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm in the midst of a pandemic and haven't showered in days, but still so happy and grateful to be chatting with mental health advocate and author of Balancing Act, Writing Through a Bipolar Life. It's Kitt O'Malley. Hello, Kitt.
Hello. Is it known or known?
It's known.
Known. Thank
Yes.
you, known.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
I caught myself stumbling through that intro a couple of times, and I just went through it because that's just where I'm at right now. I'm I mentioned we're in this COVID-19 thing as we record this, and things are different, and my energies have been shifting in weird ways, and I'm just trying to kind of go with the flow.
Yes. Me too.
Yeah, I'm sure we can all kind of relate to that. It's a lot of new happening. A lot of new.
Without a doubt. This is like in our lifetimes, we've never experienced anything like this.
Right.
It's just
right. This on such a global level, right?
right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So with that said, we do always kick off the show, Kitt, with an emotional check-in. How are you feeling? How are things going in your household?
I'm feeling a dichotomy. I'm feeling a little bit anxious and a little bit, I was going to say relaxed, because what I have been doing to cope with the anxiety is kind of just unplugging, and I'm watching a lot of TV. And, I'm not alone because I have my husband and my son home. My son's doing Saddleback College online, which he's not fond of. He prefers to go to a structured classroom setting to learn.
Yeah.
So he's missing a lot of the visual cues and social interaction. And then my husband's been working from home too. He's an engineer, and that's been challenging for him because the technology is just not really there. Like
Right.
Everybody's working from home and everybody's online, and that's not what our system was really set up for,
Right.
in terms of bandwidth, or, getting into using, software that's, isn't doing the trick when you're doing it, calling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Who knew, every aunt in the world had to figure out what to do with Zoom.
Right.
I mean, it's wild and it's weird. And my wife Jessica, she teaches community college, and she's been doing online classes, and it's definitely a challenge, right? And it's a different muscle. It's from the student side and from the teacher side. It's just weird.
Right.
Yeah. And so with that sort of anxiety you're having, you said you're coping with some TV. What are some other things that are helping you?
I think it's we've been getting groceries delivered rather than going grocery shopping. So that's something I've done in the past when I was sick. It's just like, well, I can't go to the grocery store. I didn't, so that's been helpful. We still have to wipe down everything.
Yeah.
My husband recently went to and had himself tested for the virus, and he didn't have any antibodies to it. So therefore, I would assume that none of us in this small family did, because we're pretty close together. We're not, we can stay in different rooms, but we don't. We're a close family.
Right.
Lots of crossword puzzles on my iPad, connected to my iPad, doing, solitaire and crossword puzzles, really very simple things, because my brain just can't do, well, I wouldn't say can't, but I know that there's so much I'm coping with, and we're all coping with, in terms of just our ordinary mental health, right? Just everybody has mental health. So, so trying to keep ourselves healthy physically and mentally is kind of what comes first and foremost right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I relate to that. I am someone who has depression, clinical depression and anxiety, and it's this thing has been a challenge, right? Like I rely on getting outside, and luckily I feel very grateful and lucky in that I live close to a regional park. I can just walk right in, and still access that. And I try to do it like early in the morning when there's not a lot of people. Not that there are, but it's still, so I'm still able to get that, but it's still a thing that is hard. It's still a thing that like I have to be mindful of, like where I'm at mentally and checking in with myself emotionally,
Right.
So how has that been with you and your mental health specifically? Like, are there, things you're thinking of and doing or not doing that, like how has it like impacted your own sort of mental illness?
Well, something that's interesting is that I did a couple of sessions FaceTime with my psychologist, and I really felt like right now I'm kind of in a holding pattern, which is sort of weird, that I'm not in a crisis. I think one of the reasons is because I tend to be in the eye of a storm if there's crisis around me. Partly my therapist thinks it's part of my personality, but also, I was a child of alcoholics. And so that's sort of a skill that I have. So I didn't even need it. Like there's so much going on around me that I tend to focus, I tend to put off the feelings. It's not that I'm in denial. It's just my body. That's what my body and brain do in a crisis.
Right.
So, I mean, I've worked in, when I was young, I did a lot of volunteer work. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I did a lot of volunteer work in hospitals. I was once a therapist who worked with severely emotionally disturbed kids. So I have like that background. So when things are in a crisis like this, I just kind of do what needs to be done. Same with mourning. And it's actually very common in mourning that there's this period of time after the death of a loved one where you have to take care of business. And so in that taking care of business mode, you might not be feeling the grief because you have to deal with all the financial repercussions, deal with, everything that's the sort of business of death.
Right.
And so I had that going on, and the COVID-19 crisis. And so I just sort of, my own emotional needs are sort of less. Now, when I'm dealing with, say, my husband who has anxiety, I will, one of the things I do is I just will like give him a little, visual cue for a stop. Like I can't, like he's got an engineer's mind. So when he starts to go into maybe a conspiracy theory, because he enjoys thinking that way, it's like engineers tend to think in terms of worst case scenario, because that's what they designed to solve problems for.
Yeah.
And so I'll have to tell him stop. I know he's having fun with it or whatever, but I can only take so much of conspiracy theories.
Because you know that it'll eventually sort of impact your own mental health.
Yeah, I think so. It's like if I take on a lot of his, gerbil on a, I'll point out you're kind of being a little bit of a gerbil on a, going in circles and standing still, not going anywhere in a little, I don't know what to say, what you call those things.
A wheel, I guess.
A gerbil on a wheel. Yeah, gerbil running on a wheel. So, see, my word finding is not as good as it usually is. So I do have that symptom, that sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you can't find the words you need. And actually, as I was thinking about that, it reminded me that before this crisis, I was going through a crisis in August, because I was ramping up on publishing my book. And I noticed that I was ramping up from hypomania, and I wanted to put a nip in that before it got to full-blown mania. And so I went to my psychiatrist, and he put me on an antipsychotic on top of everything else, my other two psych meds. So, and that has helped tremendously.
Oh, good.
Like tremendously. That's helped me go through this time too. Yeah. And just chilling, playing, just watching TV and doing crossword puzzles and solitaire, and just not expecting myself to really do much. And I've noticed I've started to get better over time, because I also got sick too. And I thought maybe it's COVID-19, but who knows, but I'm an asthmatic. So whenever I get any upper respiratory infection, it goes into my lungs. So I was, so when I was the sickest, I wouldn't even make dinner and stuff like that. Like my husband and I have this, he's a great provider and great support. And whenever I'm not up to par, he'll step in and make dinner, even if it means like microwaving something, you know what I mean? It's just,
of course.
I'm the better cook, but I'm not always up for cooking. So I've been getting better in terms of physical and mental health, because they kind of, for me, go hand in hand. Yeah. And as I've gotten out, from that with my aggressive treatment using my asthma meds and stuff, I've come out of that, and now I'm more energetic in that I can make dinner.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I'd imagine a lot of people can relate to the initial response to this thing being like COVID and coronavirus and the anxiety of it, like the initial response being this, oh shit, what do we do? Like, I don't know how to deal with this. Like, what's happening? And there's no wrong or right way to like respond to that. Like, however you're responding to that is okay, I think. And we have to have empathy and compassion for however people are responding initially. But there's probably, like you said, Kitt, like an initial sort of like, okay, like I'm going to be still in this. It's like, you're just like maybe hiding a bit. And then like, as you sort of like, okay, like I'm going to like step my foot outside of the cave a little bit. Right. Be a little curious. Okay, how am I responding to this? And then you get a little better, right? You like, okay, I can do this. I can cook, or I can make this work, right? And then like I so relate to the analogy of, like you growing up in an environment where you there was some alcoholism, you felt maybe I guess not out of control, but like you were like I'm not going to put those words into your mouth, but how I grew up was I felt like I had to be not a rock, but like a calming force in an environment that felt very out of control and a little wild and not in control, right? And so and there was some trauma in there. So like how I'm dealing with this now like feels maybe a little, I don't know if comforting is the right word, but like it feels a little similar in some ways, because like oh, like I've experienced this level of, not the exact level, but like bits of this hecticness, bits of this like people freaking out, and me sort of feeling a bit of calm in it, which is kind of in a way sad, but also like comforting. Like, oh, I can do this. I can get through this.
Right. I think that having grown up in homes where there was some significant chaos helps you to like develop skills
Yeah.
that are useful later in life. I mean, there's the functional part, and then there's the dysfunctional part. And I think we both had some dysfunctional part. I read some of your stuff about anorexia.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
I actually did that too. My sister and I both starved ourselves in our 20s. Um, uh, and I always tried to be perfect
Oh yeah.
because I thought if I was perfect, that it would be okay. Even it wasn't a conscious thing, but I was like a real hardcore perfectionist who had to out achieve everything, being the top in the class and the best at this and best at that. And as I've and that led to me being like at 18, suicidal.
Right.
And I've had to unlearn perfectionism and accept that I'm not in control, sort of the serenity prayer, whether,
Yeah.
and I mean, and that's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And to enjoy the beauty in imperfection. Which I think of, like when I think of it, it's the analogy is that I can't think of, I'm going to say the word wrong, but there's a Japanese broken pottery where they put back the pieces with gold, and it's considered more beautiful than the original.
Yes.
Because of how those pieces were put back together.
Right.
And it's kinsur. I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay.
Kintsugi. I don't know. It's something with a K. And so, but you can just look up on the internet, Japanese broken pottery. It's gorgeous. And so it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm 56 and I've been in and out of therapy since I was 18 and on meds since I was 30. So, and I was a therapist.
Yeah.
So I'm still licensed, but so I've worked very hard to get to where I am. And to allow myself that imperfection, and to embrace it.
Yeah. I wonder if you can relate to this, Kitt. I hear you say that, and I feel I feel very empathetic. I feel also very hopeful, and I also am reminded of the fact that I see this life, whether or not one believes in an afterlife or not, that's not what it's about. I see this life as something that is about growth, right, and learning, and also struggle, right, and that's part of it, and highs and lows, and the myriad of emotions that we contain, and multitudes that we have in us, in our capacity for love and loss and all of these things. I think that's the beauty of humanity. There's, I think, the knowing path, what you're talking about, the figuring out who we are, figuring out all of this stuff, it getting better over time, and sometimes we stumble. That is what life is, don't you think?
Yes, totally. Yeah, it's a journey, and
it's a journey. Yeah.
Right. So, and the journey can be really hard at times, but what's great about age, life experience, is that I can look back over my life and it makes sense. So it might not have made sense when I was going through it, but a perspective is wonderful. And so I'm pretty mature in my living with mental illness. I mean, I don't have a problem with calling depression or bipolar mental illness. I've lived it and looked at it and understood it, and it actually makes sense. And I'm part of that, I believe, like making sense of hardship is that as a human, I think it's very human, whether or not, regardless of belief, to as you were talking about, learn, to learn from that and to frame it in a way that's healthy for you. And I do think it's all about love. Like when I think about like all the different belief systems out there, it's always about love. So you can be an atheist and you can be like hardcore whatever religion, and you still basically, if you look, it's just different words for the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we're all we all need to love and be loved. That's like this most basic thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree completely. Now, you talk about like looking back and the wisdom in that and the privilege in that, right? Like being able to look back at your past life and your life as a child and your life, and these hardships you have and gleaning things from them, right? And
yes.
that's such a what are some of the things that you sort of in your life, like you look back on a previous self, right? Yourself in your 20s or whatever. Like, what are some things you've learned about yourself in that practice of looking back?
Well, one of the things, and this isn't so much I'm going to start with the sort of the exterior, because as I've gone through this phase in my life, which has been in the last few years have been very difficult because of what's been happening around me. I had a high needs kid. He's doing very well now, but he struggled with migraines and sort of comorbid anxiety and depression. They're kind of like mixed up, and at one time was, treated as ADHD. I don't know if he still has that diagnosis. We don't really talk about that anymore. And he, a lot of what I was going through had to do with taking care of him. So, and then when my parents fell apart, he was still in a tough place in high school. And here he was in a tough place even before, like, my mom had a stroke, and, we were having to deal with all these things with one of the people, that he loved most, so, I might be a lot more ambivalent about my mom, whom I loved very much, but still, she was a narcissist, I think. She never, ever apologized ever, and she could be just vicious. But I loved her. So, and it was nice. And we came to I guess I'm not answering your question exactly.
It's okay. I love where you're going.
Okay. So when I was in my 20s, I was mid to late 20s. I was a psychotherapist, like I mentioned before. And I had a client who was a 16-year-old male, much taller than I was, who attempted to rape me during a session. And I ended up I went to the phone. He unplugged he disconnected the phone. And luckily I was able to get out of the office and get help.
Wow.
So that and my grandmother's death and death of a close friend from high school, one of her, who had AIDS, like all those things together, I just completely fell apart. And my parents ended up, they came to the rescue. And so all the anger that I'd been feeling and going through in therapy in my 20s, all of a sudden it was just like, wait a minute, these people love me and would do anything for me. And also I had looked at, like, I'd worked with clients and families that were far more, not all of them, but some of them were far more dysfunctional than my own. And I could still see that the parents loved the kids. That wasn't the issue. It wasn't lack of love. It was that they were carrying on, sort of dysfunctional patterns. from their upbringing, and they may be struggling too with mental health issues. So I was like, well, if I can see that in these, if I can have that compassion for these families, how about my own family and parents? Maybe it's not like there was intent there to harm. My mom wasn't evil. My dad kind of always tried to kind of like say, yes, you're right. This is, not your fault. But at the same time, he was always backing our mom because that was his wife and partner. So that was hard.
Yeah.
And I really a lot got through my upbringing because of my sister, because we would look at each other and go, this is crazy.
You had a comrade in arms.
That totally helped, because we'd look at each other and we're like, what?
Wow.
That helps a lot. And I actually feel a little bit bad for my son because he doesn't have a sibling. But I think that he was a kid who needed so much attention growing up that I don't know, if we would have been able to be there for him if there had been another sibling. Or it wouldn't have been equitable,
Right.
And also, as soon as I realized I had bipolar, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 39. So, and at that point we decided, okay, no more kids, at least for now, until we figured this out. And then it was just like, okay, now I'm in my 40s and no.
Right.
So, so anyway, yeah. So
I appreciate that, and thank you for sharing. And I think you speak about those experiences so compassionately, and and there's a lot of empathy, right, in your thinking around your relationship with your sister, right, and the what you got out of that relationship and how it helped you sort of cope and experience this thing that felt wild and out of control, and oh my God, would you look at this? And then I think you clearly were impacted by that experience, and then there's clearly some thinking around, obviously you raising a son that doesn't have a sibling, there's empathy there. You see that that might have been a thing that was easier, but this is how it happened, and you recognize that, right? And I think that's empathy,
Right.
And I appreciate that.
Right. And both my husband and I were like, okay, we did therapy with him when he was young until he sort of said, I'm done with therapy for now. I'll let you know when I need it, which is when he was 10. And I was just like, since he started at 4, I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to go. You have to take meds for sure.
Yeah.
So he'd see the psychiatrist and talk to the psychiatrist, but he wouldn't see a separate therapist until later, which he's done a few different times when he's felt the need to in the moment. But we always said, hey, we know we're not quote unquote normal or typical people. My husband said, hey, I'm an engineer. Engineers are different, in terms of the way they think. And I said, I have bipolar disorder. I know that's not easy to be the child of somebody with bipolar disorder. My symptoms are far milder now. There were times in my past when I lost it with my son, and I would apologize. It wasn't right, to slap your child because they called you an effing bitch, but I did because I was angry, and I'm like, but that's not good parenting. So, so I always was open with him,
And the openness is I think so important, right? Maybe you can relate to this. I grew up at a time where maybe there wasn't some of that openness, right? And there was certain things hidden. It was a different time, and and I'm so grateful that we live in a time now where that openness around mental health is getting better, right? There's more vulnerability around it. There's acceptance around it.
Yeah, I think it's improved quite a bit, but I know that even with, like when I wrote my book, or I put stuff on my blog,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I got some reactions, that were from family member, not within the three of us, but out in extended family. I'm just leaving that name blank. That I was, hurting people by doing that. And I was like, most people who read what I've written acknowledge my compassion for my parents, and my love for my parents. So even in writing about the dysfunction, or in writing about my son, I always try to write and understand things with compassion. Not so much compassion. I mean, I needed to work through a lot of my anger, and when I was younger, in my 20s, to be able to come to that place. I think that if people forgive or have compassion prematurely before they've actually felt, you have to process before
absolutely.
you can get to that state. And I'm not saying that people have to forgive or have to have compassion, because some things are just so reprehensible. It's like, no, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You have to heal. That's all you have to do.
And there has to be like I do think like in those, I agree completely. You don't have to forgive. I think it's such a unique journey for each party. But if there is a coming to terms with like whatever happened, whatever it may be between, son and daughter, a parent, there has to be a mutual understanding of like what happened and the reality of this thing, that emotional experiences are true and real.
Mm-hmm.
And however, whatever happened, the emotional reality is real, right? And there was an impact there, and that needs to be recognized.
Right. And it can be recognized, but you can't expect people to recognize it. Like other people, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like there are people who they will just, like my mom's an example, where she never ever apologized, ever, for anything, ever. So, and I understood she was incapable of it. It took me a long time to come to that place, but I just had to accept who she was and how she was, and understand that she's just her brain, it's not, I'll call it her brain, because I don't really believe people use the term personality disorder for some mental illnesses that actually are brain disorders. And there's a certain stigma, a huge stigma, along with calling things personality disorders. And there's also like not parity for the treatment of those diagnoses, which is wrong.
Right.
Because they're every bit as real as my bipolar disorder.
Right.
So I love it so much. I don't but having bipolar disorder, the lack of insight to both. Okay, that's in terms of personality disorders, what my beliefs are. I really strongly believe that it's a misnomer, and I usually don't care about misnomers. Are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. But it's just my screen did something. I'm like, what? And, anyway, and then there's other mental illnesses and I had this myself too, where there was a lack of insight. Even going through therapy, I had a lack of insight as to how severe my mental illness was.
Right.
Or as to what it was. I mean, and I know later in my life, like my sister and a priest I saw for spiritual direction at the time said, how could you not have been diagnosed bipolar? You were so obviously manic. And, it's because at that time they thought I was having a reaction to medications. to antidepressants. And now we understand that when your brain reacts that way to medications, it could be that you're bipolar, or it could be just a chemical reaction. And actually, that's what the psychiatrist, the second psychiatrist I saw, I ended up moving back in with my parents because that I had a manic week where I didn't sleep and I was thinking psychotically. And I ended up moving back in with my parents because I just couldn't take care of myself. And I was never, I still was just treated with antidepressants, but very low dose and titrating up very slowly. Every time I'd have racing thoughts, I'd call the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist would, okay, now break it in half. Let's do it this way. What I mean?
It's a endless game.
Right.
How did your parents react to, you having these diagnoses, or you dealing with quote unquote mental health?
Yeah. Well, when I became a psychotherapist, they were not happy, especially because I went to a leftist school in San Francisco where they kind of combined Freud and Marx. And they were like, you're never going to get a job. You're going to be blacklisted. I'm like, the school was New College of California. It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm like, I live in San Francisco. This is like.
I mean, that's the place where those things exist.
Exactly. I was like, I'm not going to get blacklisted from jobs in the Bay Area. It's just not going to happen. And I said, and all my professors, they work in the Bay Area, and my colleagues work in the Bay Area. And this is like, I'm a part of a community. So
was it driven by the fear that you won't get a job, or was it more of the leftist politics or whatever?
The leftist politics, but I think too, they didn't like me. They were very threatened. My mother was very threatened by me blaming her. And in fact, even before that, like one of the first therapists I saw, I quit UCLA because of the depression and suicidality. And then I saw a therapist who wanted my mom to come in with me, and my mom refused. And I was trying to say, this woman has young adult daughters, and she knows what it's like to be a mother of young adult daughters, and she wants to help us.
Right.
Just like, it's not. I said she relates to you,
right?
Like, but she refused. But when I came home with the complete breakdown, that changed everything. Because then they rescued me, and I listened to their advice because I had to. And I sort of turned away from, I had already I kind of did less psychodynamic therapy, which is kind of like family of origin stuff.
Yeah.
And I needed, when you're in a crisis, that just sort of digs you deeper and deeper. And when you're in a crisis, it can help to just have sort of a supportive psychotherapy, and which is just trying to put yourself back together. And cope, coping mechanisms.
Right.
So
how did your parents, when you did move in, how did they help you? What advice were they giving you?
Well, they took me to and from a group practice where I saw a psychiatrist and a therapist. And I think they helped me choose who that person was. And then they, so this isn't really, I'm not really talking, maybe it's just sort of how they treated me. They gave me, at first, they didn't have any expectations of me, And then as I started getting healthier, once I was on the meds and kind of putting myself back together, then they started to charge room and board and gave me things to do to make money to pay off my debt. So I had like a promissory note and stuff because they paid off my credit card debt, which wasn't high, but and then I also was paying room and board, and then I couldn't make enough money to pay off the room and board, so I got a temp job. So, so all the things they did, and they didn't do it like, charge me room and board right when I couldn't work. They kind of eased me into recovery.
Mm.
And so there, I said advice. I'm not thinking in terms of advice, although I think that the way that they reparented me and parented me in those few months was perfect.
That's great.
So, not everybody is in that place where they can have that recovery. Not everybody can, do that.
Yeah.
Even with meds, even with therapy, like I'm on disability now. If I go try to, even just this will trigger me, just talking to you. And I tend to get triggered and then kind of flip into hypomania. I get overstimulated by social stimulation. And then the whole cycling goes through unless I really plan before and after how I'm going to take care of myself, which is what I do now. I'm like, okay, I know this is going to be exhausting, which it could be for, I'm forgetting what's the difference between, I'm having trouble remembering words.
It's okay.
Between an introvert. It's also sort of a personality thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm kind of a social introvert in that I have social skills, and I was a drama geek and stuff like that. So I am good at public speaking or interacting with one. I have the social skills, but it affects me. It exhausts me. Yeah. So I can't be around people all the time. I need to have like that room of my own. It's just actually a shared room, but I need to be able to close the door.
I'm with you 100% on that. I'm the same way. I think I can do pretty well public speaking, engaging with people, but then, yeah, it exhausts me for sure.
Yeah. Right. And actually, what's been great is as I've here in Southern California and Orange County, I've connected with people like through the Orange County writers, OC writers.
Oh, cool.
Which I don't go to write-ins anymore. But I did for a while, and being connected to writers and being sort of embraced by them, and seeing that we had the same sort of personalities, and also my involvement with NAMI, and again connecting with people and realize I don't do stuff regularly, and actually I do. I have done public speaking for NAMI, but and just my online community of mental health. Advocates that you go, hey, this is my tribe. Other people experience this too. So it's kind of normalized it for me, or helped with my acceptance. And made me feel like I belonged, which I had like my whole life. We moved a lot when I was a kid. And so I always felt like an outsider, because I'd be coming from a very different culture, like from Saudi Arabia, where I lived for 5 years as a kid, to Massachusetts, which is a very different.
Wow.
And to Southern California, which is very different. Yeah. To Pennsylvania, which is very different. Back to Southern California. And then I moved back and forth between Southern California and the Bay Area. Which are also different cultures. So, I always felt like an outsider with like 1 foot in and 1 foot out, which is also kind of the what I was in my alcoholic family system, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right. Yeah.
So, and as a therapist, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because that helps you to be able to understand what's going on and be connected to those people, but also to be able to look critically at what's going on.
Right. Right.
For self-care and understand, So, and I don't know where I was planning on going with that, but there you go.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. I mean, there's so much, I think, Like I've been writing and thinking a lot about just like the self-knowing journey, right? And how important that is to health and recovery and all that. And part of that is in how we reflect with others, and others are mirrors for each other, right? And that's what community can bring us, is that insight, and that's why it's so important,
Right.
even for us introverts.
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
what I think so wonderful about the internet
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that we do have these meaningful relationships with other people. And when I've met those people in real life at conferences, which I don't do conferences anymore, they really wipe me out. But when I've met them, I'm like, you're exactly the person you were online.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know you and they know me. And it's just like, that's such a wonderful thing, because the people in our community are honest.
Yes. They're not afraid to be vulnerable and show their true selves.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
It's
just incredible.
It's the best.
And it's so loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been huge.
And, you know, you mentioned the book you wrote. What is the status of that? Actually, let's back up on that. Like, what is your goal with that book?
My goal was, most of that writing came from my blog, but the longer pieces were adapted and rewritten and, sorted. And it's sort of a rewriting of my first book, but it's much better than my first book. And my goal was simply to put my experience in a form where people who might not get it, if they went to my blog, if they didn't read my blog. And also it's thematic. So, because I feel a lot of my pieces just sort of get lost. And having it thematic and organized gives people a way to sort of walk my journey with, and understand it. And I really always have written, not just like, my posts are not about complaining per se. I've always tried to be, I don't know if I tried to be, but I ended up being inspirational. That's what people told me when I was writing. And so I've continued in that vein. In fact, the last conference I went to was a writers' conference in Irvine. And I went to a workshop, and the professional writer who who I read a piece of my work, or I read it, or no, she read it. She shared her story, which she said she had never shared in her life. And she said, the power of my writing is that I open the door for other people to do the same.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So that was a huge compliment. She said, this is what this, she said, this is powerful. But I'm not getting a lot of sales. So, and I basically stopped doing the marketing because last year I lost, income taxes.
Right.
And I added up all the money I had spent, on editing and, design and, all this stuff. And it was just like, I lost a lot of money. So I'm taking a break from marketing. I don't want to be real obnoxious now during COVID-19 and,
Sure. You need this book to read. You're at home.
You're right. Exactly. Right. Like I could do that, but that's I don't know if I really want to do that.
Right.
So I'm just sort of waiting, a wait and see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a handful of your blog posts, and I think I commend you, because I think that anything that, I say it ad nauseum on this show, Kitt, but like when we can, as humans, go through experiences, right? Whatever that experience is, and it's unique to our own journey, right? And then we can share that with others to allow them to relate and empathize, and allow them, to your point, inspired to write themselves and share their own stories and be vulnerable in their own circles of friends. And that's the that's the rippling tide, that's the circle, rippling in the lake that we can do and we can impact and we can affect in others. And it's a beautiful thing.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
and thank you for your writing too. I mean, I was just today writing about, the piece you had on Medium about sort of about me piece,
yeah,
where you talk about your journey with your father and your anorexia. And I could relate to parts of that for sure. Not with the infidelity, but that it was a dysfunction that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. My relationship with my parents is tricky, to be perfectly honest. I don't really speak with my father anymore. And that's a boundary I've set. And I check back in with that boundary every year and I continue sort of working on that. And things with my mother are different as well. And I'm working on allowing there to be safe boundaries for me, but still sort of exist in this place where I can be present in the way that I need to be present, not them, right? Because there are certain things about my life that they just don't see or accept, right?
Right.
And I can be angry about that. I can be upset about that, and those are valid emotions, but I'm working on it. And I think I'm 38. I'm still working through that process and trying to create those boundaries. Right. But it's hard. It's hard to make that separation, right?
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, I even just had boundaries with my mom in terms of I would never talk. I actually, before she had her stroke, I would play Words with Friends with her and talk to her every day. For a while, for a number of years. But I would never talk to her after 3 p.m. because I knew that, pretty soon she's going to start drinking. And then when she drinks, she gets mean.
Gotcha.
So, and like my family, when they were well, we'd go and visit them and, and they used to live in Hermosa Beach and we live in Mission Viejo. So it was we lived in Laguna Niguel then. Anyway, it was about an hour.
Yeah.
And from here, and we would never stay the night.
No, don't want to do that.
When my sister visited, she'd be visiting from out of town. So she'd have to spend time and, try to figure out she was better at boundaries. She's better at boundaries than I am.
Yeah.
Just because of who I am. I've always been very open my whole life since I was a little bitty kid. I started doing this 3 p.m. or never overnight thing. And then this one Friday, I noticed my mom didn't play her turn and didn't respond in Words with Friends. And I was like, oh, it's over 3. After 3, I can't call now. I'll call tomorrow. And when I called, so something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't call until the next day. And my dad answered the phone, which he basically never did because he had alcohol-related dementia, and he couldn't remember from 1 minute to the next. 3 minutes later, he couldn't. It just wasn't. He wasn't capable. The short-term memory was gone. He still had the same personality, basically, more or less. I guess my mom was afraid of him, so some of his behavior had changed. But he answered the phone, and he said my mom was taking a nap. And I was like, okay, that's odd. And and then my mom apparently gestured, and he said, oh, she's awake. And she kind of gestured for him, to bring her the phone. And she got on the phone and she went, and I'm like, oh my God, my mom had a stroke. Like, it was obvious to me. I'm not a doctor, but it was obvious to me.
Right.
Somebody who had been super articulate and a debater and all this kind of stuff. She was like super high. My parents were both type A's, super high achievers. And so I was just like, oh my God. And so I had my mom put my dad on the phone. I explained to my dad that I was going to call 911 and have somebody come. I knew he wouldn't remember. I told my mom I was going to call, that she had a stroke, and I told her, and I told him, and then I, called 911. They patched me through to their local 911 and had somebody come out. I spoke to them. My mom, I believe, had a stroke. She can't talk. My dad has dementia. You might need to get me on the phone with him. And I just, my husband and I just went straight over. And our lives all of our lives were at that point in time completely changed.
Yeah.
Because she had been his caregiver. That's the thing about caregiving too. I have a huge respect for caregivers because it's very difficult. And for those of us with mental illness, I think it's really important to understand what our partners are going through as our caregivers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, because it's like my mom might not have had her stroke if she hadn't in the position of taking care of somebody with dementia.
Right.
Which is extremely difficult. And again, I don't remember where I started or intended that to go.
No, you were just relating to what I was saying, and that's a lot. That's a loss. I mean, obviously the loss of losing your parents, but there's a loss in that and prior to that, right? And how that changes and impacts, how that dynamic changes and impacts your own direct family,
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Without a doubt. I mean, I remember one time visiting and my sister was visiting with her family, my sister's eldest son, because my son and her eldest son are both the same age. And when we actually married brothers, so not at the same time, so they both were the most impacted of the kids, because they knew our parents before my dad had significant dementia, and they saw him deteriorate over the years. And for my son, it was just devastating to have my mom so destroyed by the stroke. Her brain was so damaged by the stroke. She could not speak. She only understood maybe 40% of receptive speech. And she didn't understand like the things people use with stroke victims because they still had to do with language, like pointing to a picture or whatever.
Yeah.
So he was really close to my mom, and my mom just doted on him and adored him. And it was pretty devastating to the family.
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, well, luckily they've passed on, which it was just like because I knew they never would have wanted. My dad was adamant that he didn't want to go into memory care or leave his house because they lived on the beach, and I understand loving living on the beach, but it wasn't a safe situation.
Yeah.
So, and there's no way any caregiver would take care of them because my dad would drink. So, it had to be in a situation where they couldn't drink.
Yeah.
So it was tough.
It was tough. So you wrote this book, Balancing Act, Writing Through a Bipolar Life. You don't need to market it, but I'm going to tell the listeners that you should buy it. Is there a place to buy it?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and I think it's on other places too. But definitely just if they go to my website, kittomalley.com, actually, if you just look up Kitt O'Malley, you'll probably get me.
Yeah.
But kittomalley.com, and I have a link, like a picture of my book and then a link, buy it. And it takes you to Amazon. But there are if you don't like Amazon, I think there are other places you can buy the book too. I just haven't updated that because it was published by a publisher. Then the publisher went out of business. And so I self-published it. And so I'd have to go and I haven't because so much has happened. Sure. I had to republish it at the same time that my mom died.
Oh,
so,
it's too much. It's too much. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure all those links are in the show notes for sure. And listeners, definitely pick it up because you're supporting an independent author. You're also learning about Kitt's story and learning about what bipolar disorder is. I think it's important if we all have mental health, which we do. We all do. It's important to learn about these things, to allow us into other people's lives and allow that opportunity for empathy to happen. So do that. Read her book, buy it, send it to a friend, all of those things. Kitt, before we wrap up, though, we always wrap up the show talking about empathy heroes.
Okay.
These are people in our lives who just have a great big heart, great deal of empathy. They could even be characters from stories or books or movies we liked, etc. I will go first to give you a moment to think on your empathy hero. My empathy hero actually is a collection of heroes. It's a couple months ago, prior to, I may have even already used these empathy heroes, but I don't care. A couple of months ago, prior to the coronavirus thing, I did a little empathy workshop at the Laguna College of Art and Design in an illustration class, and it was just such a beautiful experience. And this week, or maybe it was last week, I got to do a Zoom call with that class, and part of their homework for the class was to create postcards to a past version of themselves, a future version of themselves, and then just one for them in the present. And the idea is to use those opportunities to empathize with a past version of themselves, them as a child, for instance, or empathize with them in the future, just to sort of engage those empathy muscles. And I got to, in this Zoom call, I got to go through and see all of their beautiful art and reflect on it. And they got to tell me about the process and what it means to them. And it was just so beautiful. And it reminded me, that the world is getting more feely. We are being more accepting of these things. I see these young students just with these big hearts and vulnerabilities. And I know when I was 19, 20, 21 years old, I was not that. I was a mess, and it just gives me hope, and it makes me just so happy that they connected with the message of empathy, and it just made me happy. So the LCAD students are my empathy heroes this week.
Yay. For Laguna College of Art and Design. I might have muffled that up, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
The first people I thought of were my husband and my son. And my son, as he's grown to be a wonderful, loving adult, when I was the sickest, my son thought I had COVID-19 because it was an upper respiratory thing. But when I was my sickest, and I was like, if I talked, I would cough and all that kind of stuff, my son would check in with me. He wouldn't get real close to me, but he would come in. It's like, how are you doing? Are you feeling better? And he always was that kid, I remember taking him to once to a mall, and a baby was crying, and he said, he was a toddler. He was so cute. And he said, is the baby okay? The baby's sad. He's crying. And it was so sweet. I was just like, oh my gosh, he is so adorable. And then when my mom had her stroke, and she was depressed because of the stroke, he went up, one of our visits, he went up and he hugged her and he said, Grandma, I know you're going to be okay. He said, I've had depression and I'm okay. So I know you're going to be okay. I know it's hard to have depression, but I know you're going to be okay. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it was totally unsolicited. He just did all that on his own. And I was just like, that's truly empathy.
Yeah.
And then I just have a shout out to NAMI and to people like Steve Pittman, who have supported us, and actually David Sussman too, who's a mental health professional who supported the mental health advocates. I just want to give a shout out to those leaders who are leading in helping others have compassion and understanding for what it's like not only to live with mental illness, but for the families who take care of those or are concerned about those with mental illness.
Yeah.
So those would be I have more than one too. It's hard to only have one.
No, I mean, there's so many wonders out there. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Well, Kitt, where remind the listeners where they can, connect with you, all that stuff.
Okay, you can. I'm just going to give the basic Kitt, KITTOMALLEY.com is my website. I have links to all my social media presences. Those little icons are my website. And I have a link to my book on my website. So I'm all over the place. I'm on Facebook. You can just look up my name, KITTOMALLEY. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere.
All the places.
SoundCloud. I just, all the places. LinkedIn. Yeah.
Wow. Excellent.
So, yeah, I'm I did marketing before, kind of my temp job turned into a career in commercial real estate and commercial real estate finance. So, I picked up some skills there.
Nice. Well, listeners, those links will be in the show notes for this episode. Kitt, thank you so much for being a part of You Me Empathy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.